mental illness. Turn to John chapter 4. I want to look at the woman at the well story in light of connection. And actually, when I wrote the book on women, empowering women, yes, I wrote a book on empowering women. Come on, ladies. Thank you. I gave you a chance to connect with me. You didn't connect back, and I just ran off the stage. I wrote the book Fashion to Reign. I actually used this story, but I actually missed a piece of this story that I actually got about 6 months later. Actually, somebody else wrote about part of this story of the Samaritan woman. I thought it was so profound. I'd like to go back and edit that chapter in the book because I'll show you in just a minute. So John chapter 4, did I tell you that? Verse 7. There came a woman of Samaria to draw water, and Jesus said to her, "Give me a drink." For his disciples had gone away into the city to buy food. Therefore the Samaritan woman said to him, "How is it that you, being a Jew, ask me for a drink, since I am a Samaritan woman? For Jews have no dealings with Samaritans." Jesus answered and said to her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that says to you, 'Give me a drink,' you would ask me, and I would give you living water." And she said to him, "Sir, you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where then will you get this living water? You are not greater than our father, Jacob, are you, who gave us this well and drank from it himself and his sons and his cattle?" Jesus answered and said to her, "Everyone who drinks this water will thirst again. But whoever drinks the water that I give him shall never thirst. But the water that I give him shall become in him a well of water, springing up to eternal life." And the woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water that I may never be thirsty, nor come all this way to draw." And he said to her, "Go call your husband and have him come here." And the woman answered and said, "I have no husband." Jesus said to her, "You have correctly said, 'I have no husband.' For you have had 5 husbands, and the one whom you are with now is not your husband. This you have said truly." The woman said to him, "Sir, I perceive you are a prophet. Our fathers worshipped in this mountain, and you people say that in Jerusalem is the place where men ought to worship." Jesus said to her, "Woman, believe me, an hour is coming, when neither in this mountain nor in Jerusalem will you worship the Father. You worship what you do not know. We worship what we know, for salvation is from the Jews. But an hour is coming, and now is, when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth. For such people the Father seeks to be his worshipers. God's spirit, and those who worship him must worship in spirit and truth." The woman said to him, "I know that the Messiah is coming. He's also called the Christ. When that one comes, he will declare all things." Jesus said to her, I who speak to you am he." At this point, his disciples came, and they were amazed that he had been speaking with a woman. Yet no one said, "What do you seek?" or "Why do you speak with her?" So the woman left her water pot, went into the city, and said to the men, "Come see this man who told me all things that I have done." This is not the Christ, is it? This is a really beautiful story, and I don't think I'm going to take a lot of time to unpack a whole bunch of facts that actually make the story come to light, but just to say a few things. One is, this is a Samaritan woman. 2 things she has against her in this culture. She's a Samaritan, and she's a woman. So when the disciples come back, they are shocked that Jesus is talking to a woman. She's shocked that Jesus is talking to a Samaritan. So she is the epitome of, I would reach out and you will not reach back. But, so she's got rejection, can you see it? Built in. She's like, he's going to reject me, he's a Jew, and he's a man. And so she's got on, I'll reject you before you reject me. Have you ever done that before? I'll let you know I don't care that you reject me, and I'll just reject you first. So she opens the conversation when he says, "Can you give me a drink?" And she said, "Well, what are you doing asking me for a drink? You Jews, you think you're better than us Samaritans? You think God came from your branch and all that kind of stuff? And so, why are you asking me for a drink?" And she's just making sure, like are you getting this? She's a woman who's expecting to be rejected. Instead of dealing her a rejection card, he says to her, "Well, if you ask me, if you knew who was speaking to you and the gift that I am to you, you'd ask me, I'd give you a drink, you'd never be thirsty." she immediately clicks into our father, Jacob. Are you following me? Did you get what just happened? She immediately says, your father and my father, not my father Jacob, not your father Jacob, our father Jacob. What did she do to him? She said, she feels his, you're going to reject me. Oh, you're not going to reject me. You're making a connection with me and you value me. And he begins to do another thing that is completely illegal, and that is he begins to teach a woman. Now, I don't know if you know this, but the most famous rabbi named Elzer in the days of Jesus said, I'd rather burn the Torah than teach it to a woman. It was illegal to teach women in the days of Jesus. It was illegal. That's why every single gospel writer, all 4 gospel writers, make this statement. There was 3,000 men and women and children. Whenever they counted the gatherings, some people think, well, they didn't count the women because they didn't value them. No, the gospel writers were trying to tell you, when Jesus spoke, women were there. They were not trying to exclude the women. They were saying, and the women were there. It'd be like preaching in 1950 and saying there was 3,000 white people and black people were there. You're not saying it to dishonor them. You're making a point the black people were there. Are you with me? It's illegal to teach women. What's Jesus doing? He's teaching a Samaritan and a woman. And he begins to talk to her about the way the spirit world really works. What is he doing? I'm telling you what he's doing. He's connecting with her and he's saying, you are valuable enough that I don't care what other men say about you. I don't care what the Jews say about you. I don't care what the male species says about you. You're worthy of connection. And he begins to connect with her. And when she feels connected, she starts to get it and she connects back. And she says, our Father, and she begins to ask him. She goes from cocky to, hey, you guys say that we should worship here. Our Father said we should worship here. Who's got it right? And she begins to take the humble position and say, I can learn from you. Are you watching what's happening? She's saying, I connect with you. He says, go call your husband. And she said, well, I don't have a husband. Now, this is the part I got wrong. And Jesus said, well, you've had 5 husbands, and the one you're with right now is not your husband. Probably like most of you, I always thought he was exposing her fornicating relationship. But it's not true. See, women did not divorce men. Only men could divorce women. This woman has been rejected 5 times. And the one she's with now has nothing to do with sexual relationship in the Greek connotation, won't marry her. Like he won't even marry her. Jesus isn't saying, you sinner, I see you've been married 5 times, you finally told the truth. He's saying, I get that you've been rejected over and over and over and over and over, and now you have a guy, he still is rejecting you. But I connect with you. I connect with you. Because see, in the days that Jesus walked the earth, polygamy was legal, but divorce was so rampant that it would make American marriages look like a healthy statistic. In fact, when Jesus said to his own disciples, he quotes Genesis, and he said, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. Therefore, what God put together, let no man separate. And when the disciples realized that Jesus just said marriage is forever, Peter turns to Jesus and said, who can accept this? Now, I understand there would be some people in America who could say that. But the average American wouldn't say that. The average American who may even get a divorce would say, well, I believe marriage is supposed to be forever. The disciples are in a culture where they threw women away like rags. In fact, they wouldn't even let they didn't not only let a woman vote, a woman could not be a witness in a court case. You know why? Because Jews believe she was inherently a liar. So they couldn't own property. They couldn't be witnesses. They couldn't be taught the Torah. And Jesus is speaking to a woman, and he said, I know 5 husbands threw you away, and the one you have right now, you fear he's going to throw you away too. But let me tell you something. I value you. I love you. The disciples their comeback, you can imagine. Got something to eat? Hey, you need some food? I got food you don't know anything about. They're talking amongst themselves. What's he doing talking to the woman? I don't know. You ask him. I'm not asking him. You ask him. And you'll notice that they stand there while the Lord finishes his interaction with the woman. What's he doing? He's not just connecting with the woman. He's teaching the disciples how to connect with the woman. He's saying to the disciples, this is how we treat people. The woman is so taken. This woman who's been rejected. I mean, can you imagine divorced 5 times? Divorced. 5 husbands divorced this woman. She's got a boyfriend that won't marry her. I mean, she's outcast of outcasts in her city. She goes back to her city. She begins to tell them, hey, I just met a guy. He told me everything I've ever done. But listen, here's the connotation. He didn't just tell me what I've done. He valued me anyway. That's what she's excited about. Not that he's told her all the stuff that she's ever done, not all the stuff that's ever happened to her, but he treated her with value in the midst of her rejections. And she's a woman who's a Samaritan. Are you with me? And Jesus connects with the woman. And you know what happens? She goes back and transforms the city. One connected outcast. One connected woman, 5 times married. Who in the heck is going to listen to a woman in a culture in the first century who's been divorced 5 times and's got a boyfriend that won't marry her? And she goes back and transforms the whole city. Why? Because she made a connection with a man. It wasn't just words. She made a connection. She begins to say, our father, your father Jacob gave us this well. And she understands that even though she's a Samaritan, she's a half-breed, and she connects with the Jewish side. Remember, the Jews don't just hate Samaritans. The Samaritans hate the Jews. And she crosses over the line, generations deep, and says, your father is my father. We got the same father. He gave us both this well. Are you getting this? They connect. And she goes back, one divorced 5 times woman, and changes the city. What would happen if you really knew you belonged? What would happen if you had no fear of disconnection? That you could be fully alive and fully yourself and totally transparent because you know you are loved, even though you've been divorced 5 times, even though you have the stain of a man who won't marry you. Suddenly I found someone who loves me in spite of everything I've ever done.